I am not someone who is wed to any one parenting philosophy or style. This is mainly because I don't believe that there is any one right way to parent our children. But over the last decade or so, I have come to realize that I do have a parenting mantra, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, I'm Allison Egidi, a pediatric sleep and wellness coach and a mom of two. I love to help parents find solutions. This is How Long Till Bedtime. I like to say that becoming a parent is like becoming the CEO of a company in an industry that you've never worked in before. You're suddenly in charge of everything, and you're running this company by reading books, asking friends for advice, and doing lots of Google searches. And people's lives legit depend on you running this company. No pressure. I don't know about you, but I think all of the decision making can be overwhelming and feel never ending. I personally was very humbled once I became a parent, and I continue to be humbled on a weekly, if not daily basis. Just when I think I have one decision made or a challenge figured out, something changes. I learn something new, or my child throws me a curveball. And because I'm a planner and someone who makes very intentional decisions, I put a lot of thought and often research into things like choosing a pediatrician, deciding how I'm going to feed my babies, choosing a daycare, choosing elementary school, hiring a summer nanny, etc. And what I learned is that sometimes I made a big decision after a lot of thought and consideration, and then later started to feel that it wasn't the best decision or circumstances had changed. And while maybe it was the best decision, then when I first made it with what I knew, now it's not. And sometimes that doesn't feel very good. So let me share some examples where I had made a thoughtful, intentional decision or had a stance on something and then started to realize I needed to be open to changing course. So let's start from the beginning. I was sure that I would breastfeed Addison. Unfortunately, after my challenging delivery, my body did not go along with that plan. I was riddled with guilt about being forced out of that decision that I had spent a lot of time thinking about and I had strong feelings about. Another early decision I had made that didn't work out was around sleep. I had planned to have Addison sleep in our room until she was 6 months old. But when I realized that she was waking every time my husband or I moved, it felt like we couldn't breathe. We, out of desperation, tried putting her in her own room. And while it certainly didn't fix all of our sleep struggles, changing our plans in that regard really helped. But it was still hard to do, and it felt not great to change course. So those were some of the early changes I kind of got forced into or felt forced into and felt a lot of guilt around. And then the moment that I remember really starting to think about how often I might be needing to be more open to changing my mind or changing my stance on something was at Addison's 4-month wellness visit. I left that visit feeling like the pediatrician I had chosen was not going to be the best fit for us. I wasn't quite ready to admit that I had made yet another decision that wasn't working out. And it ultimately took this doctor rubbing me the wrong way on multiple visits before I made the switch. But as soon as I made the switch, it became so evident so quickly that making that change was the right choice for me and for Addison, that I remember starting to really think about the fact that I needed to give myself a little pep talk around being okay with changing my mind as I started to figure out this whole parenting thing. This was when the seed of my mantra was planted. And it started to get easier for me to trust myself to make a decision, and then also, if needed, to change my mind with less stress and angst. Before having my girls, I was convinced that I was not going to be one of those parents who lived by a strict sleep schedule. We were going to be parents who had children who went with the flow, so we could go out, see our friends, do all the things. And if you've heard my story, you know that our nearly 2-year sleep struggle with Addison practically broke me. When I finally stumbled upon a sleep coach for the first time and hired her, I shared this view with her around wanting my kids to be flexible when I was describing my parenting style. I had some initial resistance to her argument for us needing to find Addison's optimal schedule, and I hesitated. I actually delayed starting the plan that she recommended. But then I reminded myself that what we had been doing wasn't working, that I could try her way for 2 weeks because I was reserving the right to change my mind on my stance on being a parent who was anti-strict sleep schedules. And by letting myself reserve that right and giving myself that 2 weeks to try something else, all of our lives improved significantly in this household. And then I became the queen of sleep schedules. And as time went on, I started approaching basically all of my big parenting decisions by telling myself that I would do my research, I would be thoughtful about making the best decision at the time with the knowledge that I had. And then, if circumstances changed or if I learned something new that made me realize there was a better decision, I would reserve the right to change my mind and not feel bad about it. Another impactful time that I had to implement this mantra was when it came to choosing an elementary school for Addison. I visited all of our local options because, as we know, I'm a researcher, and for a lot of good reasons, I chose a school. I felt good about that decision. I remember having a business lunch with someone locally who had older children, and we were talking about choosing schools. And she, in a very nice way, shared why she wasn't sure that I was going to be happy with that decision that I had made, given her experience. We then went on to have a great conversation about my mantra, about reserving the right to change my mind. And sure enough, after 2 years at that school, not for the reasons that that mother had mentioned to me, but actually for a reason I hadn't even contemplated during my initial decision making, I realized that that school was no longer the best fit for Addison, and I transferred her to another school. And that new school ended up being absolutely the right school for her. And on that topic of schools, over the last couple of years, the topic of choosing a school is a conversation I have had dozens of times with parents in our area. It's a very hot topic here, and I'm always happy to share with a parent who asks me why I made the choices I made with my children and choosing schools and changing schools. But it was really around this topic that I started to more publicly share my mantra with other parents because it's stressful to choose a school, and people have very strong opinions about their schools, and there are options. And so I found myself encouraging parents who asked me about schools to visit all of the schools that are an option for them, to ask other parents like me who they know at the various schools about their experience, and then to make the choice that feels right to them, all while knowing that they have reserved the right to change their mind. And of course, I hope all kids are happy at their first school and parents are happy there and they're able to stay. But I always have to smile when I get a call from a mom or I bump into another parent who proudly says to me, I'm exercising the right to change my mind on this whole school thing. And so I started to get my mantra returned to me, and I noticed that it was helping people feel less anxious about making change. I really can't tell you how empowering this mantra has been to me on my parenting journey. It helps me make decisions much more easily, and it allows me to confidently make changes when it's the best thing for me or for my kids without guilt or feeling like I failed by making that initial choice. I can make a change almost feeling like it was part of the plan at this point. The reality is that I think many of us feel like we are learning how to parent on the fly and learning how to make big decisions like this as we go. And even when you're making decisions for your second, third, or fourth child, what was the best decision for your previous child or children may not be the best decision for the next child, or circumstances may have changed since you initially made the decision with your first child. When you make a decision with that mindset that you are making the decision with the knowledge that you have now and you're reserving the right to change your mind, you've already granted yourself this permission that sometimes it feels like we need in order to confidently change course. Whether that be around a parenting stance or a situation or any type of viewpoint we have, it's nice to have that permission to change your mind. And as my children get older, I've started to share my mantra with them. Sometimes they ask me for something and I am frankly not sure what the right answer is. So I ultimately make a decision, but then I may share with them that I'm making X decision, but I am reserving the right to change my mind. So let me share a recent example that's kind of fresh in my head. My girls have the ability to text family members off of their iPads. This was something that we granted to them during COVID. At some point, one of them had asked me to give her permission to text some friends from school. I wasn't sure I was ready to take that step, but she doesn't really use the iPad that much, and she made a good case for it, so I set it up. I frankly don't even remember all the circumstances of why I decided to give this a go, but I set it up. And over a series of weeks, I started to feel like I had made a mistake. She was not doing anything wrong, which made it tricky, but I wasn't loving everything that I was seeing with all the communication and the frequency of it. I had a night of feeling extreme disappointment in myself for allowing us to end up in this situation. I mean, I was really disappointed in myself for a night. And then the next day, I reminded myself that I can change my mind on this. So I sat her down and I explained that I'm learning as I go here, that texting wasn't something I ever navigated as a child. So I don't even have my own childhood experience to bring into this. I shared that while I knew she was going to be disappointed and that she had not done anything wrong, I was giving myself permission to change my mind on this and to take away the ability for her to text her friends because I now felt that that was what was in her best interest, and that's part of my job. Of course, I shared some more details as to why, and I have to say, she took it surprisingly well. And I have found that having this mantra not only makes it easier for me to make decisions and change course when I need to, but I think it's also helping my children understand where I'm coming from and how I'm approaching decisions and maybe changing my mind on them in this ever-changing world that can sometimes feel terrifying as my kids get older. We're just doing the best we can with the knowledge that we have. So if you find yourself agonizing over a parenting decision or feeling stressed about wanting to change your stance on something or make a change for your children or yourself, consider trying this mantra out. Remind yourself that you made the initial decision or had that initial viewpoint based on the knowledge that you had at the time. And now the circumstances have changed, or you've learned something new, and you're reserving the right to change your mind. And I'd love to hear from you. Do you have a parenting mantra, or have you changed your mind on a parenting decision or stance or viewpoint? Shoot me a DM on Instagram at Sleep and Wellness Coach, or look for my post on this topic and share your mantra or that time that you reserve the right to change your mind in the comments. As always, thanks for listening. And in case you need to hear this today, you are doing a great job at this whole parenting thing. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to How Long Till Bedtime. To learn how we can work together to improve your child's sleep, please visit sleepandwellnesscoach.com.